Hello and welcome back to the Football Fellowship, where today we are going to be picking out the best England 11 that could win them the European Championships this summer. We'll be going from back to front, picking out the best of the bunch and showing how Southgate should set them up to bring football home.
Yeah, the Euros are just around the corner with the first game, Germany versus Scotland on Friday, but England first game on Sunday versus Serbia. And Toby, I actually gave my thoughts on the 26-man squad when it was announced on Friday. The video, if you want to go check it out, is on the channel. I'll put a link to it in the description below. But what are your thoughts on the 26? Are you happy with the 26 that Southgate has decided to go for?
I think so. I think when we saw sort of the rumours coming out of the players that were being dropped, the likes of Maddison and Curtis Jones, I think as each names was sort of coming out, they made sense. Maddison's form in the back end of this season hasn't been amazing. I think Jones has got way too much competition in that midfield to be in there. And then players like Trafford, Kwanzaa, I think we expected. Maguire was one of those big names that unfortunately due to injury he wasn't going to make it. He most likely was going to be starting in for England in that starting 11, but unfortunately missed out due to injury. The only two names I think that were a little bit surprising for me were Jared Branthwaite, who I think this season has been absolutely exceptional, and I think he could have been Maguire's replacement in that starting 11 potentially, but he did miss out due to Southgate saying maybe a little bit inexperienced. And Jack Grealish as well, a name that we would have really expected to see in there, someone who has been in the England squad for a number of years now, and maybe a position, maybe one of the only sort of natural left wingers alongside Anthony Gordon that did miss out, which is a shame. So yeah, only those two, but I do think Southgate has mainly got it right, and it was really what we expected.
Yeah, I think it was for the most part what we expected. I think what's really exciting is the fact that it appears that Southgate has gone for players based on form rather than the ones he's trusted and tried with in the past. If you look at the likes of Henderson, Rashford, Calvin Phillips, none of them aren't in the side anymore, and we've got a very young, exuberant side, but potentially lacking a little bit of experience. We'll have to see how it goes. But yes, we have to choose our best England 11 going from back to front. And we've actually managed to agree on 11, which I didn't actually think we were going to do, considering I thought that there might be one or two differences. But I'm quite surprised at the fact we've gone for the same 11.
Yeah, it wasn't even like any compromises were needed really. We were just pretty much exactly the same, which yeah, made it a lot easier. So if you're ready to go through it, should we just jump right into it?
Yeah, let's jump into it with the defence, because we've gone for the same back five. We've gone for Jordan Pickford in goal. We've gone for a back four of Kyle Walker at right back, John Stones right centre back, Mark Gahey left centre back, and Luke Shaw at left back when he is fit. And potentially, do you want to start off at left back? Because Southgate came out and said in his interview after selecting the 26-man squad that Luke Shaw was a, in brackets, calculated risk, and then he should be able to play a part in the second game versus Denmark. Touch wood that he's able to. But how do you see Luke Shaw going and the whole left-hand side of England's defence?
I definitely think it is the weakest part of our squad, really, that left back position. We've either got Luke Shaw, who has not played, I don't think he started since February, I think it might even be his last start. Coming into the second game already in the tournament could potentially be a big risk. And then you even look at the backups and it's going to be Trippier, who has been a really good performer for England over the number of years, a pretty okay season at Newcastle, nothing exceptional, maybe not as good as we would have expected from Trippier, playing on that left-hand side that doesn't quite suit him, or maybe even a third option of Joe Gomez, who has played left-back for Liverpool this season and done really well, I think, actually. So it's none of those options particularly feel great, but I think on paper, I think Luke Shaw probably is the best option for the way that we would set up.
Yeah, I think I do agree. I think the fact that the entire defence, Luke Shaw is the only left-footed player, is a bit of a worry in my opinion. I think obviously if he was fit, Harry Maguire would probably be starting a left centre back, and obviously he's not a left-footed, but there's just something about him and his experience that if the left back wasn't the first choice, I'd feel a lot more comfortable if he was there as well. The fact that Luke Shaw isn't going to be fit, Trippier cutting in on his right hand side and wanting to not being able to go to the byline and put in a cross first time of real quality, I do think there is something to be said about how the chemistry of the team is going to end up being going forward, how maybe that's going to affect the way we play. I'm not against Kieran Trippier playing a left back if Luke Shaw was to be out, I just think it's not the best replacement, because ideally you'd want a left-footed left back. I mean, the fact that Ben Chilwell isn't even in the squad as well, he had his own injury issues. So I think we're really relying on Luke Shaw to be able to be fit, because I think if he were in the side, I think everything would just gel that much better.
Yeah, it's really frustrating because if Luke Shaw was fit and had played at least a few games, I think even at the end of the season, it would have been a no-brainer that he is going to be starting and starting throughout the tournament. It's it's a bit of a tough one. It feels like whoever is going to be playing is going to be come with a few negatives, which is a shame. And even alongside that left back, as you said, with the left centre back, we've gone for Mark Gahey, who I think is going to be the most comfortable in that position. But with Maguire being out, the options there aren't amazing either. Even though Gahey, I think, is a fantastic defender, but again, he has had his own fitness injuries as well, fitness issues, towards the end of the season as well.
Yeah, and I think in that Iceland game when he went down with a head injury, I think it was hands in head moment, because if he went down as well, I'm not 100% convinced on Lewis Dunk, who is probably going to be deputising as the second choice for Marquez. I think this is our England 11, but I think Southgate is going to go for Marquez as well. And I just think that not taking Branthwaite, we had touched on it a little bit earlier, I think was a bit of a mistake. Maybe there would have been too much pressure and the furore, especially around with the English press, where everyone would have been expecting Branthwaite to start. And for someone who has definitely earned his right to be in that England squad, I disagree with Southgate's comment saying he thought it was a little bit too early for him. I think that's wrong, because as he's shown in other positions, which we'll come on to, if you're good enough, then you're old enough. And I think Branthwaite should be in there, because if Gahey, who, like you said, Toby, hasn't had a stellar bill of health throughout the course of the season, if he were to go down and 32-year-old Lewis Dunk were to come in, he's only got six England caps to his name, and coming up against sides later on in the tournament, I would really not be happy with him starting as centre back. I think he could do a solid job, but I just think there are so many quality sides and so many quality players who would just be easily able to exploit him.
Yeah, it's a strange one with that inexperience, because we see the likes of Cole Palmer, who's had his breakout season, been exceptional. No doubt that he's going to be coming. Kobbie Mainoo, exactly the same, straight into the England squad at a young age. Saka, when he was coming through as well, just thrown in the deep end in the England squad. And I think Branthwaite is someone who has been exceptional this season, seems to have really taken on that role as Everton as one of their key players, first name on the team sheet. And I think he could have done a really good job in this England team. The only way I could potentially see that maybe it's not the right fit is how England may play and how they may set up. If it is going to be Luke Shaw as that starting left back, he can play a number of positions. We could see him invert at times, sitting in alongside the number 6, whoever that may be, once we reveal it, or pushing on and joining the left wing and overlapping. It could see England sort of set up as a back three when we are on the ball, with Walker, Stones, and that left centre back. And I think Mark Gahey does fit that position really well, playing that left-sided centre back in a 3. I think he'll be very, very comfortable there. Branthwaite maybe not so much, obviously playing in a more conservative Everton side, who are in a more traditional back 4, sitting a lot deeper maybe perhaps as well, maybe not fitting that style of play for England just yet. So I can see maybe where Southgate may be coming from in terms of style of play. But I think in terms of experience, I think for Branthwaite, he would be able to step up. And even if he was that second choice centre-back behind Gahey, ahead of Lewis Dunk, I think that probably would have been a better option, as you said.
Yeah, I wonder if having no Maguire meant that there had to be no Branthwaite as well, because clearly Southgate has decided to go with the more experienced players of Dunk and Gahey. And I think with Dunk, at least, I think the game, the internationals in March especially, I think that second goal that England conceded against Belgium, I think it was, where Dunk made an absolute howler of it. I think he ended up trying to slide for the ball on the ground. He didn't quite get there. It was awful, really. It was quite comedic, if anything. And Romelu Lukaku put a lovely ball with the outside of his foot to Yuri Tielemans, who scored 2 in that game. And after that moment, I thought Dunk played himself out of the side. But I think the injuries have meant that he's been able to, regain a place in the side. And if he were to be in the side, then I think it would be okay. But as long as John Stones stays fit, because from going to being like one of England's most important players, he's now arguably the most important player, because having lost our first choice centre back on the left hand side with Harry Maguire, if he were to go down as well, then I think you could probably kiss any chance of England winning the Euros goodbye. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I do think that is fair. And I think you've summed that up really well, that Stones is an exceptional centre-back. He has been one of the best centre-backs in the Premier League for a couple of years. But I think also in comparison of that quality of the centre-back options we have, the drop down from John Stones is pretty huge. And he really does lead that backline and has stepped up over the last couple of years. With those three remaining players of Walker, Stones and Pickford, they pick themselves at this rate, and it will be really, really key that they stay fit all tournament and they stay in great form, because I think we can agree that there's no doubt that those three will be the other starters and should be the other starters in that back five.
Oh yeah, 100% without a shadow of a doubt. I do just have to say though, because I think, yes, you got your first starting 11, which is really important, and you got to play best 11 when it suits you. But I think squad management is going to be such a crucial part, and I think Southgate in previous tournaments has done quite a good job of that. Because I think someone like Ezri Konsa, who's probably backup right centre back and potentially third choice right back behind Walker and Trippier, but with Luke Shaw effectively being out, Trippier maybe in my own head is a little bit more of a left back than he's a right back in this squad. So I think Konsa having to come in whenever he does come in and having to deputise for Walker or Stones, because I don't think there's a guarantee that Walker and Stones are going to be playing 90 minutes in all three group games. And I think normally you win your first two, fingers crossed England do manage to do that, and then you rotate a little bit. And maybe even in games, if England were to have the luxury of winning quite comfortably in either of the group games, and maybe Konsa comes on and, deputises for Walker and Stones, give him a break, wrap him up in cotton wool, make sure they don't get injured. But I think, yeah, that not only Konsa, but Gomez, I think the entire defence is going to have to play a crucial role, because I don't think, maybe apart from maybe one of the centre-backs, maybe Lewis Dunk, I think pretty much all of the defenders are going to be used in the group stages, I think. So I think they all need to be in the tip-top shape of their life and need to be ready to come in whenever it's necessary, because I think they will be used.
Yeah, that's a great point about that third game in the group stage. We see it very, very regularly from the top teams. If they have had two comfortable starts, two comfortable games where they're able to get 6 points, they take that risk, I suppose, of potentially not topping the group and dropping points to rest those players, because you are going to be getting through. And I think that defence, I think it should be strong enough, even if there are a lot of rotations. We see Walker, we see Stones, Pickford's not going to be rested. There's not going to be any rest for the goalkeeper. But along that back line, I think if we do change it around in that third game, there should be enough quality to at least get a point in that third game, and I think it'll be a huge key. But yeah, those question marks are in those knockout stage games, in those later stage games, if these players can all stay fit, which fingers crossed they can. And I think with Kyle Walker, I don't think there's too many question marks on that. He is so reliable, always seems to be fit, always seems to be somehow getting quicker at however old he is now, 34. So yeah, as you said, hopefully they can all stay fit and get us through. But in terms of talking about the defence, there was one right back that we haven't mentioned so far in the discussion, and moving into the midfield and who is going to be playing in that midfield three, we have got someone who traditionally could be seen as a right back.
Yeah, we have got Trent Alexander-Arnold in our starting midfield, and I think we've seen his quality all season long, and we know how good he is on the ball. But it was the game against Iceland, the friendly, which we lost, which I don't want to talk about too much, if I'm being completely honest. But you could see his quality when he came on the pitch, and you could just see he was able to unlock a defence in a way that no other player was able to do. And I think, especially in the group stages, when there are going to be teams who, yes, Serbia, Denmark, Slovenia, are all decent sides. However, we are one of the favourites for the tournament. And so there is a stark contrast in quality, regardless of the fact that they do have players who can hurt us. So they are going to sit back. Let's not say they won't. They are going to sit back. And having someone of like Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's got a range of passing and can break down a team in different ways. You can play a little 1-2 with him on the edge of the box. You can play a long breaking ball to the other side. He could switch it up. And I think he's got qualities on the ball that no other player in the England side has. So for me, and I think for you, similar to Toby, he has to be playing in that England team.
Yeah, and I think the fact he has been given the number 8 in this England squad, I think speaks volumes and says that Southgate probably is going to be playing him in that midfield alongside, it's got to be Declan Rice. I think having those two you can play them in a number of ways. I think you can play Trent a little further forward as a right-sided 8, playing in that sort of almost De Bruyne role where we see him drop back a little bit, putting in those balls into the striker, who I'm saying these things like the striker who we know it's going to be, but playing those crosses that Trent is one of the best players in the world at is a huge asset to have, and I think it would be a massive waste for him not to play, especially in the group stage games, as you said, where teams are going to be sitting deeper. You need those players to pick that out. Or you can also play Trent, I think, right alongside Rice, playing as a double pivot, which I think is more likely, especially given that it is international football and teams have to be a little bit more safe, and they do have to have two players sitting in front of the back four. So yeah, I think definitely in the group stage game we will see Trent being that main man alongside Rice in midfield. But I think in other situations where maybe we need to really keep hold of possession and use it, maybe if we're playing a much stronger side like a France, like a Portugal, like a Germany, where we need to keep that ball a little bit more when we can, we may see someone like Kobbie Mainoo, I think, potentially sitting alongside Rice. Or even if we are coming up against, say, a France and we are a little bit wary of the threat that France could pose, we could also see, I think, Conor Gallagher maybe even playing there as someone who brings a fantastic defensive work rate, somebody who is really, really reliable. You do lose that sort of attacking outlet, but I think would be a more sensible option sitting alongside Rice. So yeah, Trent we've got on our starting 11, but there are definitely circumstances where a couple other players could be there alongside Rice too.
Yeah, and actually, just on Conor Gallagher, because you mentioned him there, let's not forget that he played the majority of the season for Chelsea in that number 10 position before Enzo Fernandez picked up an injury, and then before he dropped back and Cole Palmer took up the number 10 position. So he can absolutely do a job there for us. I just think that in this England squad, when you've got a plethora of talent and a sport for choices, you've got Eze, Bellingham, Foden, you probably are going to play Conor Gallagher a little bit deeper, just so you can give one of those more attacking players a little bit more freedom. But before we come on to those attacking players, of course, the number 6 for England has to be Declan Rice, because he is undoubtedly, again, another one who's one of England's most crucial players. And behind him, probably you've got the likes of Adam Morton, maybe Kobbie Mainoo, maybe Trent Alexander-Arnold at a push. But really, he's another one where it's him and the quality behind him. You can tell they're good players, but there is a massive step off. So any chance England have of going far in the tournament, Declan Rice is another one who absolutely needs to stay fit and play the majority of minutes.
Exactly, and I think he really stands out in this England side and in international football. As I said, he can sit and he can clean up. He can get those important interceptions and tackles as needed if England are having the ball up high and having a lot of possession and teams are trying to counter against them. But also he's brought so much more this season, especially for Arsenal. Seeing him really drive that ball forward. He's got a very, very good keen eye for a pass as well, which I think is a massively underrated part of Declan Rice's game. And may not be as good as Trent Alexander-Arnold, as we were saying, but he is certainly someone who will be able to pick out those wingers and that striker running forward. And again, just someone who is so reliable, always seems to be fit, will always be able to play a full 90, I'm sure, and is one of the first names on the team sheet for England at the moment.
Yeah, and I think the season he's just had at Arsenal put him in even better stead because of the amount of possession that Arsenal would have had on the ball, the amount of things he would have been required to do with it, the amount of time under pressure he would have had. I think having Rice with the season he's just had at Arsenal, if he were to be the solo number 6 or in the double pivot, I think he's in good stead, and I think it probably would have been the perfect training for the tournament coming up ahead. But we don't need to talk about Rice too much because we know it's going to be him. But who's it going to be going forward? Of course, it's going to be Jude Bellingham, because ultimately La Liga Player of the Year, one of the probably going to be contenders for the Ballon d'Or, Champions League winner Jude Bellingham with his first season at Real Madrid, arguably England's best player, which for someone who's only 20 years old is just absolutely crazy to say.
Yeah, not only arguably England's best player, but one of, if not the best players following this season going into the tournament. Just an exceptional player, and you can see him to just do everything on the pitch, and having him at number 10 as that focal point, I think is really, really key for England. He can push up and sit alongside the striker if needed. In like a 4-4-2 press, we can see him doing that job if needed. Can see him dropping right in and supporting the double pivot if needed as well. He can drift out to the left-hand side, which we've seen, and maybe interchange with the left winger and allow some space for them to come in. He will be that main man for England, I am sure. And I think a lot of teams that have been throwing around, a lot of people wanting to see England's massive attacking talent and seeing maybe Cole Palmer start and Jude drop in alongside Rice. Yes, it does give us more attacking bodies, but I think that really not only restricts Jude in terms of his attacking output, but I think it also leaves us a little bit too defensively vulnerable, because Jude will want to be pushing forward and getting involved in the attacking play, because that's where he thrives and that's where he has thrived for Real Madrid. So I think 2 players in behind him, Jude ahead of them pulling the strings, I think is the right balance that England will need for the tournament.
Well, I'll tell you what, just on that, because before the 26-man squad was announced, I actually was clamouring for that Rice, Foden, Bellingham midfield, actually, not Palmer, Foden in there, just because I thought that they could do it, based on the fact that I think that Jude Bellingham has just been one of La Liga's best players and won the Champions League with Real Madrid. Phil Foden has won the Premier League 6 times. Then they're young players in age, but they're not young in experience. So I think having them alongside each other and having the wherewithal to know that, right, if one of us goes, the other one needs to drop back a little bit. And I think they have that game intelligence and footballing IQ to understand that and not shirk their defensive responsibilities. It's just, for me, why I think that potentially a double pivot and only one of them playing now, and it's got to be Jude if we're being honest, is just because of what's behind them in terms of the defence, especially with Noah Maguire, Luke Shaw being out injured for at least a game and a half, where I think that the double pivot just makes more sense. And arguably, we would all like to see some free-flowing attacking football, which I think the England side are capable of doing, even if it's under Southgate or not. But I just think that pragmatism is probably not the worst approach, especially in international tournaments, because as we've seen, it's done wonders for England so far.
Yeah, exactly. And it's difficult with national team setups that you just don't get enough time, I think, to implement a lot of tactics and to sort of really nail down people's roles and positions. And I think it's just safer to have players playing where they're more likely to. I think Jude and Foden, they have both excelled in that sort of number 10 position this season. And I think playing what ultimately could be, I know they would obviously be number 8s in the setup, but having 2 natural number 10s just ahead of Rice, it's a little bit too much of a risk. And as you've said, I think England have been really good over the last few tournaments because they have played it a bit safe. You do have to do that to get results in international tournaments, even if it's not as exciting. And maybe we will see all this attacking talent come out in one of the group stage games with a few substitutions if things are looking good, to get a few more sort of run outs and get some game time shared around the whole squad. So we might see it, but it's too much of a risk, especially in the knockouts. It's not really going to happen, is it?
Yeah, unless England are chasing a game, then by all means go gun ho. Like, get rid of Walker, put Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back, have a 3 of Rice, Bellingham, Foden, or maybe add Cole Palmer in there. Why not? If you're chasing a game and you need to get a goal or get the win, then absolutely go for it. But I think when you're starting from kickoff, you don't do it from kickoff, because I think from there it probably will lead to some more England tears, which I'm sure the rest of the world won't mind too much. But then we should probably move on then to the forwards, and it's a 3 which I think a lot of people are going for. I think who it is on that right-hand side is actually quite interesting, because we've decided to go for Saka on that right-hand side with Kane down the middle and Phil Foden not in midfield but actually out on that left. Because I think on that right-hand side is probably where we should start, because you've got Saka, you've got Palmer, you've got Bowen, you've got Foden who could play there as well if need be. There's a lot of competition, and some of the best players in the Premier League this season have been some of those right wingers. So we've gone for Saka, but I think you can make an argument for any one of those, really.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely some good shouts in there, like you said, pushing Foden over and maybe bringing in someone like Anthony Gordon on that left-hand side is potentially an option. I think Cole Palmer, just based off this season alone, really does have a great shout for someone who could be playing right wing as well. I just think Saka has now done it for a number of years, and I think that is a big, big thing. He's been England Player of the Year for 2 years running. He's had another really good season with Arsenal. He is becoming, I think, one of those sort of main men and leaders in that squad, even at such a young age, just because of how long he has been in the setup and how well he has performed. And I think he quite suits maybe how England are going to set up. He's not the riskiest player, which I think is really good to have. He's very good at taking on a man, but he's not somebody who I think is going to risk losing that ball. He's someone who can sit really wide, recycle it when needed, but knows when to attack, and that's a really, really key thing in these tournaments, is knowing when to go direct and potentially risk losing that ball, taking on a player, or recycling it back round. Especially if it is going to be Trent in that right-sided 8, someone who's going to sit in that half space. Saka is going to be very, very comfortable sitting out far wide as a pure winger, as opposed to someone maybe like Palmer or Foden, who will naturally drift in a little bit, and there might be a bit too many men in the same space. So yeah, for me, I think it's got to be Saka from the start of the tournament. Maybe if we see some of these players coming off the bench making an amazing impact and Saka not having the freshest start, we could see Palmer come into that side. I don't think that's too crazy of a shout. And even if not, having Cole Palmer off the bench, I think is going to be a massive, massive impact. And as well, he can play a number of positions. Anywhere along that front three or in the number 10, he could be seen. And I'm sure he will make an impact, even if it is going to be Saka starting.
Yeah, because as we've seen in the 2 warm-up games, it's been Palmer playing in the number 10 position. Obviously, you would expect that Jude Bellingham would come in. Obviously, he's not in the squad at the moment just because he had a little bit of a break after Real Madrid won the Champions League. But I think he'll come back into the side and he'll be playing week in, week out. And then, so week in, week out, I'm talking about as if it's the Premier League. He'll be playing every single game in the tournament. And Palmer will probably be moving out to that right-hand side. But I think off the bench, even Jared Bowen, who we probably brushed over a little bit and probably not giving him the credit he deserves, it's just the quality of the players ahead of him. Him off the bench, I think, is really interesting one where I don't want to see him starting. That's my personal opinion, because I'd rather see Saka, Palmer on the right-hand side. Just because I think Bowen off the bench is a bit more like 2014, 2016 Theo Walcott, like what he was for England. There's just a little bit of a different tempo with him, and when you need a goal or maybe you need to try and do something in the game, his electricity, his just change of tempo, his feistiness, maybe it's just the way he looks on the eye, rather than his actual ability. But I just think he's a little bit different. He's a little bit more unpredictable, and he can really help England off the bench. So I'd rather see Saka, Palmer, and in my opinion, for me, Saka, because I think the other 2 off the bench are really crucial players who can really make an impact. Obviously, it's got to be Harry Kane up top. I don't think we need to talk about him too much. Just hopefully, touch wood, that he's got a couple of injuries at the moment. His back has been playing up a little bit. He did play for England against Iceland, so that was very encouraging. He's now got, I think it's 9 days up until that game, the first game against Serbia. So hopefully he's fit, because not only is he our best striker, he's also the captain, and he's going to be the one leading the line.
Yeah, exactly. One of the best players in the world. Again, it's another player that England have got at their disposal, which is why they are one of the favourites for the tournament. And the final player, obviously, we have touched on him throughout the midfield, is Phil Foden, because he's got to be in that team. It's a really difficult one of having him out on that left-hand side, because a few people saying maybe he hasn't looked great for England playing on that left. He doesn't particularly suit it, I don't think, for City even. He has really thrived this season in that number 10 position. I think a lot of joy that Foden will have is if it is Luke Shaw playing at left back. I think that's going to be a huge, huge thing. Having Shaw as the overlap, as the widest left-hand sided player, when possible for Shaw to be able to push on, then Foden can start to drift in a little bit. And I think that will suit him a lot better. Almost like an attacking 5, I think, going across. We could see Saka, Trent sort of just behind, whipping in those crosses, Bellingham in the number 10, Foden sort of in that left-hand sided half space, and then Shaw maybe as that sort of overlapping far-sided left player. I think that combination could be really, really nice if it's Trippier, like you touched on earlier, Mev, where he may have to cut into cross and may slow down sort of interchange between them. It could restrict Foden's output, and that's something you don't want to do after the season that he has had.
Yeah, but I tell you what, like I said right at the beginning, though, it is hard because it doesn't feel like that there's an England 11 that's got like 100% chemistry. It does feel like there's always someone who may have to sacrifice themselves. And the reason for me why I really want Foden out on the left wing, especially to start the tournament, is like we said, with no left-footed player at left back and no left-footed player actually in the midfield who on that left-hand side. So what you're really looking for is someone who can keep the width on the left-hand side, and unfortunately that probably is going to be Foden. But if it's someone else, if it's like Anthony Gordon, for example, you don't really have that ability to go to the byline and put in the cross the first time. I mean, Gordon can do it, but it's not his dominant foot, and sure he could put a ball in, but the chances are it's going to find someone, and especially when it's going to be a crowded area with like the Serbia, Denmark, and Slovenia packing the box. The chance of that ball being of high quality enough to find someone and create a goal scoring opportunity, it's going to reduce the chances. So at least Phil Foden on his left foot is probably going to be a bit more effective out there. And I think I do agree that without Luke Shaw on the left hand side, whoever plays the left wing is going to have to sacrifice themselves and hold the width because Trippier is just going to be cutting inside. If it's Gomez, he's not going to get too far forward, and we all know his inability to score a goal or create anything from an assist. So it is one where you're really looking for that right hand side being the dominant attacking side for England. And really, if the right hand side isn't working and then you look into the left, then I think England could potentially find themselves in a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, it's just, we've said it all video now. It's just that left hand side where the question marks are, and they could be changing. I think throughout the tournament potentially if things don't seem to be working in the group stage games. I don't think that's going to come to the sacrifice of Phil Foden. No, I think he is just had too good of a season and is too good of a player to be dropped. I'm trying to think if there's any other ways maybe where this England side that we have, how they can set up to really get the best out of the players. The only other potential I'm thinking is maybe could we see whoever is in left back inverting and sitting alongside Rice. It's something I think we very, very rarely see in international football and tournaments, but it's something that Luke Shaw has done. He did at the start of the season for United. I very highly doubt it would be Kyle Walker. Obviously, he likes to sit back and I think is that recovery player for England. But could you see any way potentially that maybe if the left back is coming in and inverting and Phil Foden's holding that width, then it allows another player to come forward? Is that a way that England could set up potentially?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, England and Southgate have got to find a way to get the best out of the players that they have because they have so many quality players. We've seen Kyle Walker invert from right back, and he's not the best at it, but he has been doing it for Manchester City. So to ask him to do this in this England side with the experience that he has, he'd be able to do a job. And I think Trippier, if he were to invert as well, he could also do that. I think then it probably brings in Anthony Gordon more of into a shout, a player who we probably expected to be Marcus Rashford, and we're all quite surprised, and surprised in the good way actually, that Southgate decided to go for Anthony Gordon. But you've now picked these players in your squad, and they're all young, they lack international experience, but they're in the squad because you think they can do something, so you've got to start picking them. And I think there definitely can be a situation where I think, especially against Serbia, who probably will go with a back five, not certain, but probably, you could probably go for an Anthony Gordon who's going to keep that width on the left-hand side and really try and stretch that defence to create space for the other players and like the midfield runners of Trent or Bellingham or Foden, Eze. We haven't even spoken about Eberechi Eze. So there's so many players that I think the most important thing for England, no matter who plays, is just to be patient, because we saw in the warm-up game against Iceland, I know I said I didn't want to talk about it too much, but it's the most recent England game, and it's a way for us to learn from our mistakes, is be patient no matter what's happening in the game, even if you're behind, because I think there were too many times where England were just trying to go for it. You have the quality of players to break a team down, to unlock a defence, and regardless of where they are on the pitch in terms of the position, there's still freedom in that England side to move around and find space yourself and interchange positions when you're on the pitch. So don't let the game state take away from what you're trying to do, and just stick to the plan, because I think the players on the pitch, and most of the players in the squad, every single player in the squad is good enough to make an impact.
100%, and I think that's going to be a huge thing for the tournament, is players coming in when needed. It's not going to be easy every game for England. There are a number of really, really high quality teams, and I think if we see England get to the quarterfinal, I don't think we're going to be going into every game being a favourite. I think they're going to be really, really close contests the quarterfinal onwards. I think there are 6, 7, 8 teams in this tournament who could potentially go on and win it, and that's going to be a huge thing. Is when you get to those quarterfinals, semi-finals, finals, they can be really, really boring games sometimes. They can be both sides not wanting to take any risks, not setting too much up, and unfortunately you just have to play into that sometimes, and it can be going into extra time. You may need those impact players to come on, Eze, Gordon, Palmer, who could really make the difference in the later stages of the tournament. And it is great to see that England do have that quality in squad depth, which maybe we haven't had in the last few tournaments, and something where we have missed out on. So now we've gone through that 11, we've gone through how they may set up, how things may change. where can this England team go based on that starting 11? Do you think how far can they get, and what will be a good achievement for England given the quality that they have?
It's such a tough one because we are however many years, we're 8 years into the Gareth Southgate England side. And it is time for results, I would say. However, you do have to acknowledge, regardless of the critics, that the fact that Southgate has got this England side with the amount of quality that it has now, as far as he has in tournaments, get into semi-finals, get into finals, I think eventually we do have to win it just because the squad and the quality of players, they are capable of winning, and you don't want to waste another generation of players, of quality players who are all at the top of their game. They're all the key men for their respective clubs and all lighting up world football. So you should be able to find a combination of players who are able to win you the tournament. And I think that's what Southgate's always done really well, is he's always found the best team. I hope that he's able to do it again. I think England should definitely finish top of their group. No disrespect to other teams. They've all got players, they've all got good players who can hurt us. However, none of them are really in a shout of winning the tournament. We are. So I would say, based on how I think the draw might go, that England have to at least get to the semi-finals. If they don't get to the semi-finals, I think it's a disappointment. But again, it just depends on who we get in the draw. So if we get like a France or something in the quarterfinals, then it is what it is if you lose to them. But I think, considering we're favourites or either second favourites, I think England have to get themselves to that final for it to be deemed acceptable. Oh, I don't like that. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I think it's got to be semi-finals at least, and I think to even be in this situation, I think speaks volumes of the squad that if we're not getting to the final four of a major tournament, most people are going to want the manager gone, which is crazy when you look at tournaments before Southgate, when we're getting knocked out in the group stage, we're being knocked out in the round of 16 to Iceland, who at the time were extremely low ranked and complete underdogs. And the managers were gone, no doubt. It's now got to a point where if it's not the final four, there's massive, massive, massive question marks over the manager. And I think that is what it is. I think we've got to get to the semi-finals. I think if we lose to a France or a Germany potentially in the semi-finals, then it won't be a massive disappointment because they are really strong sides. But ultimately, I think with the squad we have, we should really be looking and hopeful that we are going to win the whole thing. There's a reason we're favourites amongst all the bookkeepers, all the media, and it's not just the English media as well. We are still one of the favourites across Europe. So I think, as you said, anything less than the semi-finals is a big, big disappointment. But we should really be gunning for the tournament. I think we could do it. We could do it. Looking at that starting 11 is very, very strong.
Yeah, we could absolutely do it. The only thing is, we've got ourselves into good situations, but can we take that final hurdle? Can we get ourselves over the line against sides who are as good as us? And can we beat them in a one-off game? In a one-off game, anything can happen. We just have to find a way of getting ourselves through it, which I think this England side is capable of. The side has enough tournament experience. So does the coaching staff. And, Germany 24, could it be the tournament where England finally win a major tournament ever since 1966? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. I really want us to win it. I really want us to win it, but I'm just not sure. I think some of the injury issues we've had have really stunted my optimism. I think is probably the right way of saying it. And yeah.
That's years of disappointment and a pessimistic English spirit in you, Mev, that is not letting you get your hopes up too much, which is after years and years and years of a golden generation who didn't do anything and finals and semi-finals where we lost in extra time or penalties. It's difficult to get your hopes up too much, even though we could do it again. We'll see how it goes. Once we win that first group stage game, like 2 or 3-0, we'll all be saying it's coming home, so we'll go from there.
Yeah, and I remember after we lost that Iceland game, people were saying, "Oh, this is the worst prepared side we've ever seen in history." And I'm like, "What on earth is going on? It's just one game." But it all depends. It could all come down to one game, whether these players have a future in an England shirt or not, or if Southgate is the manager next season. Next season, I keep talking about England. This is the club side, but at this rate, it may as well be because of how much time and effort I'm putting into them. But yeah, I don't know. I really want to be confident. I'm choosing to be confident, and it's probably not coming out.
Well, we will have to wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure to check out all our other Euro content out on the channel. We have a video up from last week where we're breaking down every single team, how we think they're going to do, and we're predicting who we think is going to win it right at the end. There will be another video coming out later on in the week about what the predictions are, who we think are going to be our winners, our favourites, our dark horses, all of that good stuff. If you're new to the Football Fellowship, please give us a subscribe and a like on YouTube. It really helps us out. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.